Would you call yourself a crypto OG?
I wouldn't say OG.
What was your first app?
I was trying to build using a system called colored coins. Which,
you are an OG.
I was trying to build,
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Rollup. Welcome to a chain abstraction palooza where we just wrapped up an epic one-day marathon in the heart of New York City, diving deep into chain abstraction with some of the top teams in crypto. Trust me, this series is packed with insights, laughs, and a few surprises you won't want to miss. Shout out to Omni Network for helping to put this together with their upcoming mainnet soon, targeting the interoperability and UX problem that we're currently facing in the Ethereum and Modular ecosystem. We really enjoyed this series and we're looking forward to putting all of this content out there. Let's jump right into today's episode after a quick word from some of our awesome partners who make this possible.
Vertex Edge is now live on Say Network. Say users can now trade 50 plus spot and perp markets with the unified order book liquidity of Vertex Edge across Arbitrum, Blast, Mantle, and Say. The next 6 weeks, 850,000 Say tokens will be up for grabs as trading rewards every single week, exclusively on Say. Join Vertex on Say Network now on Vertex Edge. That's vertexprotocol.com.
Mantle is a layer 2 blockchain with one of the biggest on-chain treasuries in all of crypto, and they have a 100-day campaign called Metamorphosis live now. What this is it is a campaign for their liquid staked ETH token, METH, as well as their upcoming liquid restaking token, zkEVM, where you can utilize this token on the Mantle network in a variety of different apps, some of your favorite restaking protocols and DeFi protocols, and earn yields in the form of powder, which will eventually be turning into a governance token. Mantle's been around for a while. We like them because they use their own form of EigenDA. They have a good ecosystem and they're growing. So check out this 100-day Metamorphosis campaign and hope you guys enjoy the rest of this video.
Live in New York City, David Silverman, Polygon, OG, crypto. Would you call yourself a crypto OG?
I mean, definitely got Bitcoin early and did a bunch of researching early, but I wouldn't say OG. I don't know. I'd first to say that like researched for a while and excited to be a builder in the ecosystem.
I respect that. Some people are like, no, I'm an OG, like, and just like
what
art.
is an OG? Is it
What is OG?
2015? Is it 2013?
Yeah, I'd say
2017?
yeah. 2015 was building my first application, so if that gives me the title, I'll take it.
What was your first app?
I was trying to build using a system called colored coins, which was on top of Bitcoin. I was trying to build like a competitor's thing called eShares at the time, which became Carta. So, yeah.
And you were the VP of growth at Polygon?
VP Products, yeah. VP Product at Polygon. I'm the pretty face that says what the devs are working on, yeah, excited to, great team I get to work with and building awesome stuff.
Cool. All right, we have a ton of, well, not a ton of product questions, but like over time, Polygon has had like how long have you been at Polygon now?
Been at Polygon about 2 years, but have been building their ecosystem for a pretty long time.
Okay, cool. So they have like evolved the product over time. Originally, it was like the proof of stake chain, and then some deep development on the zkEVM, and now a lot of it is focused on the AggLayer. Tell us about like what that journey has been like, and is AggLayer Polygon's like final form, or is it is there stuff that's going to be built on top of it? I'm curious to hear how you all are thinking about that.
So people ask a lot of like, when I say what I do, I say we're Polygon, we're an Ethereum scaling solutions company. Okay. Is ultimately I think always been the desire of Polygon is to say, there's some places that are for whales, whale DeFi, and that was always mainnet. And then you had Polygon, and you looked at like who was using Polygon in the early days. It was people using apps like Aave, Curve, Sushi, Uniswap with tremendously small amounts. It was for the everyday person. I know that's what attracted me to building on it because it was at a time when there was a question of could the EVM scale. Polygon POS didn't necessarily scale the EVM, it just made it really cheap. And it was a question of, is the masses going to move to up and coming chains like Solana at the time, or are we going to stay in the EVM? And then we had, Polygon, BSC, AVAX, C-Chain, and more kind of show that, nope, the EVM actually has achieved kind of this area of dominance. And then Polygon realized from running this type of chain, there is a limit to what you can do on a POS chain. First off, we want higher security. And so we went all in on ZK to build the zkEVM. But more than that, it was the question of interoperability. One of the things that I think doesn't get really appreciated a lot about Polygon, I think a lot of the times it's like, oh, the infrastructure there is hard compared to some of the newer L2s. Oh, things are a bit slower to load. Well, part of it is because the state size, just the pure actual amount of data on the Polygon blockchain is massive in comparison to a lot of these other L2s. In fact, if you take, I know the stat was as of at least April, since Genesis, what has been happening on OP, on Arbitrum 1, and on Base, and you summed it all up together, it was less transactions than would have been done in the last year on Polygon alone. And that has been going historically. And so there's just a massive amount of data. The size of that node is getting to a point that we realize you can't actually run a single chain. The way this is going to work is a network of app chains and the ability to shard and scale out as needed, right? Like we do in the cloud today, right? We're no longer running mainframes. We're running these general servers that we can spin up, spin down. But as a user, you don't need to know what you're touching, and apps can scale and scale down as well. And so that's really what prompted the AggLayer was, let's build a really good base chain package, CDK, but AggLayer's not just for CDK, it's just one of many that we'll support. And the idea is let's build tech that allows you to actually interoperate across a group of chains. And that's kind of the vision, is Polygon's always been purely about scaling, and let's make the best individual chains that we are part of those ecosystems, POS and zkEVM, as well as let's just try to scale more broadly by building the tooling that either the Ethereum community needs, whether it's something like Plonky 3 or Plonky 2, which powers most of the other ZK teams and other up-and-coming ZK things like SP1, where it's built on Plonky 3 at Polygon Tech, and on the core level, and also at this kind of higher level, like let's build the AggLayer, let's build things that allow for true interoperability, not just locking down to an ecosystem like the approach we're seeing from other teams like ZK Sync or OP.
Yeah.
All right, well, okay, can I get spicy?
Yeah.
All right.
Same.
Let's get spicy.
I disagree with your final point there on like true interoperability across ecosystems compared to something like Superchain, I believe is what you said there.
Yeah, Superchain or Elastic Chain.
Is it, okay, help me understand the difference there between like what is true interoperability? Does it interoperate with like an OP mainnet? Like my understanding is no.
Oh, so we know, AggLayer in its current state, no. Just to be clear, AggLayer in its current state, it's been an evolution. From the genesis when we launched zkEVM, that bridge was a shared bridge. In fact, if you looked on it, Ethereum was network ID 0, already had 2 chains, and Polygon zkEVM was chain 1, and we'd pre-reserved out the chain ID for POS as well. And then we added A-star zkEVM, we added XLayer, and I think we're on like 13 different chains that are connected to that shared bridge. From day one, I think we knew that we didn't want to build purely like these isolated instances. I think you look at like the OP strategy, every chain is its own isolated bridge that's going to be really hard to change to later if you want to do
I don't disagree with
true
that.
operability.
Yeah.
And I think second is kind of the approach we're taking is AggLayer started off as this contract program that was really tightly tied to our ZK provers. And I think as we've said before, and especially I know we said a lot over it at ETH Denver and later now ECC, we are fully intending to support any VM, any consensus, with a very strong base layer guarantee powered by the pessimistic proof, where it's more in line, I would say, with the concept of scaling that we're seeing from teams like, I'd say Hyperlane is a really great example where it can be deployed everywhere. I'd say unlike Hyperlane, there is an actual base guarantee provided by ZK that says you can't actually rug other chains. What AggLayer is a protocol from chains to chains to allow them to be confident that they can't be rugged by another untrusted operator.
Cool, so I agree that having a shared bridge contract out the gate, immensely helpful from a raw technical perspective. But how should people think about Superchain compared to Hyperchain? Is that ZK Sync? Elastic Chain and AggLayer? Because to me, it still necessitates that various rollups opt into this like shared bridge contract, and that's when you get a lot of these nice properties, right? But so to me, there's kind of like a few of these big clusters that are springing up that might not interoperate with one another as well as they will internally.
Totally. So I'll actually be even more clear and say that AggLayer is going to support any of these stacks. We do not require the usage of CDK at all whatsoever. Now, CDK is going to be the best way to connect. Obviously, same development team, and obviously, I think it is our opinion we're going to build CDK to be the best rollup stack. That's our goal. Candidly, I think we're a little flat-footed out of the gate. We've learned a lot from those mistakes in the same way that OP had Bedrock after their first initial release and realized, hey, writing these L2 VMs is hard. I give a lot of props to the ZK Sync team, to the Scroll team, to the Arbitrum team that have just had really stellar releases out the gate. Software is hard, and I think dev to dev, we all appreciate the work everyone's doing in ecosystem. I would say our approach to scaling is actually, you can take AggLayer, and this is going to be later this year, It's public on GitHub. We're building this mode called EVM Sovereign that you can take the contracts that exist today, deploy them to any EVM chain, and they will link in with the pessimistic proof to the AggLayer. And so you don't actually need to opt into chain level, as long as there's someone willing to operate the AggLayer infrastructure. Chains can join permissioned or not, right? At the end of the day, AggLayer will be permissionless opt-in, and even permissionless to leave. There's nothing that Polygon will be able to do to stop, because again, AggLayer, I want to be clear, especially how we branded it, it's not Polygon. We were fortunate to be collaborating with a ton of other teams. Espresso has been really great to work with. The team over at Gateway, some of the core developers of Aragon have been great. We work closely with the Succinct team. There's a bunch. Movement has been contributing to make a Move version of AggLayer that can be deployed to any Move VM. We have teams working to build Cosm Wasm support. So our goal is that, for every major VM, there's a click deployable package, throw it on, run the infrastructure, whether it's your chain or that you're operating, or a chain that you just want to be able to interoperate on. Like that's there out the gate.
Yeah, I mean, credit where it's due. One, you all have pushed the frontier in many ways throughout the years, and I respect that a ton. But two, I do see you all collaborating more with other teams in the industry to kind of get to this end state more than some other kind of roll-up cluster teams. And so yeah, I respect. I think that is actually like an optimal growth strategy, independent of like the vibes that come with it. Yeah. Okay, cool. We can drop the spicy like Superchain versus AggLayer and move on from there.
How do you see this vision of AggLayer coming into these rollup clusters that we've talked about, like each of them so far, as well as this broad idea of like abstracting away complexities of multi-chain interactions on chain right now?
Yeah.
I think like the core focus right now of chain abstraction, as we're calling it, and as a lot of this series today is kind of going around, is around gas and is around multi-chain. So how are you seeing AggLayer kind of play a part into this? And also just how are you seeing this develop from your lens on this idea of abstracting away user complexities?
Yeah, so I think I kind of set like AggLayer a bit aside from standard chain abstraction. I think when we think about chain abstraction, like CakeStack, it's collaborative, but I think CakeStack is definitely thinking a lot more of like from a bit more higher level. We deal with intents and we deal with
I literally think it's like
wallets,
a different perspective.
Exactly.
Like it's looking from like the user account level, whereas most of the development has been from the chain up.
Bingo.
And so I think we'll meet in the middle somewhere here at some point.
And I think that's one of the things is like, we know at least inside Polygon that like our expertise is definitely not at that higher level area. One of the best collaborations we enjoy working with is talking to the folks that are building a lot of the MEV searcher stuff or building intents. One of my number one teams I love calling up to just look at our concepts is Fastlane. They run all the MEV on top of Polygon through Polygon Fastlane. They have the new Atlas stuff. They've helped us really think through how is the cake stuff going to work in a concept when you have an AggLayer, in a concept when you have a shared sequencing cluster like with an Espresso, and trying to think about like what we can be doing on our messaging level. I think there's Jimmy Chang from Catalyst gave a really great quote during his talk on Modular Summit that's like, ultimately my consumer is searchers and I need to build the best software for searchers. For me, like realistically, who's going to be sending these AggLayer messages? It's going to be apps, and it's also going to be these searchers, these higher level abstractions, and so working with them as early as possible is going to help us build the best product out. So yeah, it is really a meet in the middle. But I think right now we do have a lot of teams that are just working at that top level or working at that bottom level and not really trying to collaborate.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that makes me think like, and maybe this is too abstract of a question, but a few years out from now, where do you think you and like the Polygon team are going to be at? And in context of the rest of the crypto ecosystem, I feel like there's a lot of almost like paradigm shift level innovations that are getting close to being like prod ready. I'm curious from a zoomed out lens, like what you think some of the most important things that are going to be happening at that time.
Zoomed out lens, I think that it's my hope that people start to care about security. It has been clear the market does not value it right now. And I think that's caused definitely some of the, I would say, struggles with some of the ZK teams is we were forced to go to market, I think, earlier than we would have liked to by the rollout of certain things like ARB stack and OP stack that at the time did not have proofs or had proofs that were permissioned. And by immediately throwing out that app chain game, forced a lot of the ZK stacks to go live earlier than they would have liked. You've seen that with Elastic Chain just coming online now, right? The ZK stack with Kronos, with us, CDKs. We had a big blitz at first, we've scaled back, and then we're refine the tech and go out, right? They've had a couple more years to solidify their base stacks, but ultimately, going out without proofs, you would hope the market would say we care and value security, but evidently it hasn't.
It has been fascinating to see the shift in Ethereum culture specifically. I feel like before 2020, 2021, it was extremist almost on like everything must be insanely decentralized, provable, like et cetera. And then really when the first rollups sprung up, it was the complete opposite picture. But there was like a strong cultural association with Ethereum that I think allowed the community to be okay with it. But from like an empirical perspective, it was a massive shift in how people were thinking.
I mean, from an empirical perspective, Polygon POS was arguably more secure than many of the rollups before they had proper fraud proofs that were permissionless. But saying something like that would be sacrilegious in certain Ethereum circles.
It is crazy how
it's
that
crazy
is the
to
case.
say. I got in this argument a lot with some Ethereum researchers, especially at EF, that were like, "Oh, you can't promote Polygon because we have to promote rollups." And I'm like, "Well, the rollups aren't really rollups yet."
No, they weren't for a long time.
Arguably, still fully aren't yet.
Arguably, we're still cooking on it. Yeah, it has been fascinating to see that.
Cartesia is your home for app-specific rollups. At the forefront of developing new tools and platforms that enhance the capabilities of blockchain technology, Cartesia enables applications that are flexible and built to scale. Build on a full Linux environment and use traditional software libraries, but in blockchain development. Go to cartesia.io, that's cartesia.io, to learn more about building your own app chain today.
Everclear is pioneering the clearing layer. The clearing layer can almost be thought of as splitwise when you go on a trip with friends, but for the blockchain. What I mean by that is when users are sending cross-chain messages, there's oftentimes fillers and solvers who have balances left on different chains that they need to rebalance and reset their positions. This is where Everclear comes in. Everclear is pioneering a collaborative approach to the chain abstraction future, and they are willing to work with interoperability partners, solvers, and other providers in the space to build a interoperable and chain abstraction future. Check out Everclear at everclear.org, and welcome back to the Rollup.
Of course. I think that's part one, is the value of security. And the second one is like, I truly do hope that we work on the chain abstraction. I'm gonna give a really hot take. I don't think smart wallets are gonna fully take off in the way that like everyone fully believes.
What is a smart wallet to you?
Smart wallets is like these smart contract wallets that everything is gonna be done with a contract wallet on chain, et cetera. Right. I think that like, first off, there's just been so many wallets that have been created through EOAs that even providing an upgrade path to move from EOA to smart wallet isn't gonna work super well. I know with Polygon, we were actually ready to put EIP 3074, which was the ability for EOAs to get this kind of smart contract wallet functionality. We were ready to throw it to mainnet, I believe in June. And we know that there was the impetus to do a new EIP 7702, which temporarily does a deployment, and we're ready to roll that out as soon as the community has kind of locked down the spec, right? We don't want to become incompatible with Ethereum, but for us, we very much view it as, I'd say I personally view it as like, there's just so many EOAs out there today that to make this distinction between, oh, you had a wallet that was issued by this older standard, this newer standard, that's a really bad way to go about things, that we should just be working on, just straight up provide the best experience. And so I'm hoping that that line blurs via things like 7702 and other chain abstraction principles. And I also hope that like developers actually, especially of applications and of tokens, like think and research what is out there, what can I do to make my app work with these standards? What can I do to make my app work with these newer wallets? We've seen so many apps over the years just not include standards that would have made things so much nicer over the years. I mean, things like, I think it's like EIP 309 that I know USDC has had since like day one, allowed people to sponsor payments. No other token ever integrated that. Or like a 12, like Permit. Permit isn't even widely used for a lot of tokens until relatively recently. A lot of UIs don't work well with smart contract wallets. And so it's like, you know, as many people can say they're working on that top layer of like account abstraction, chain abstraction principles, until we have like app devs and contract devs taking this notion of user-focused design seriously, we're not going to move forward as an ecosystem.
But I also think it's closer than you may think in terms of like actual products going live on mainnet where users can basically take their seed phrase from their EOA, plug it into a non-custodial one account for all chains.
I mean, but you just said take a seed phrase and plug it in.
Correct.
EOA. I shouldn't know until a seed phrase exists, and the fact that I'm moving around with a seed phrase is like
ridiculous.
Super dangerous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah. So that's your point, right? And like, that has been like in the investment circles and for some of these chain abstraction kind of top layer, that's been like the biggest question is like, how are you gonna get users to take what they're currently doing and kind of go and do something else? And like that whole conversation is, yeah, it's gonna be tough to kind of get over.
Yeah, and this is something we've thought a lot about, and like as we've been going deep down the chain abstraction stack, it's like, okay, cool, yes, there's these various EIPs, like they've been shifting around over time, but okay, this model might work for everything on chain, but when you like get everything working on chain, you have to think about how the front ends are built and how the wallets are actually like connecting to these applications, and there's a whole like tech debt problem in itself as well. And so, yeah, it almost makes me wonder if it will be a very gradual process throughout time of old EOAs upgrading to these wallets, but maybe we should just focus on like new applications and new users to onboard like into these
Into
smart
the newer
contract
wallets, yeah.
I mean, like, say what you want about how the app ended up turning out. I thought Frontech was one of the better onboarding experiences.
Yeah, well,
I think
PWAs as a whole, Privy unlocked a massive
Privy
space.
just generally has crushed it, and I think that like embedded wallets in that frame are going to be great. But Privy, as I recall, is still in EOA. Like, it's not. I don't believe it's a smart contract wallet. I mean,
and it's also kind of annoying when you move on different apps on Privy. If you don't use the same email or figure out how to link the same accounts, you end up with different wallets on different apps on all of them. Exactly. So it's still not like the same experience.
Yeah, but to a point, I think that's somewhat okay. I mean, I wish it wasn't that way, but ultimately, like, I'm hoping one day there's a better just sign in with Privy button, the same way we currently have like sign in with Gmail, et cetera. Like, right, we have that on web because we have extensions like MetaMask and we have extensions like that. I think would love to see it done at the, obviously, like for phones, like the OS level would be great. If Apple did it one day, they won't.
Right.
So the question is, who's going to go do that?
Right.
But the current pattern we have of jumping out of an app and jumping back in is just not like is not working. Right. We can't replicate the extension model in mobile, at least as it currently is. So excited to see people who are far better at that than I am solving that problem. And on the front end side, I agree. But I think the issue isn't just like we need to pay down tech debt. I think we need to get like, and this is going to be a controversial take, like very serious, competent front end devs to and product designers to come into Web3 and work on what do these experiences look like. Because I mean, some of the mistakes we see in designs we see are just actually to the point that I get deeply concerned, where there'll be alchemy like API keys and clean text in your code that I can go in and just take because there's an assumption that that's the pattern I saw in an example somewhere. And I think that, you know, the bar for what we consider to be a well-designed app in Web3 is just so substandard compared to where it is elsewhere. Yeah. Like Zora, incredible application from a design-focused team, I think is a great example of like the standard we need to see going forward.
Yeah, they have a really cool like TikTok-esque app built on Zora now, where it's fully functional. It looks like it's like social media app, like Web2, like a normal app.
What's it called?
Do you know what it's called?
I think it's just like Zora. I think it's like the Zora app.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's pretty insane. I was shocked. I saw it yesterday for the first time.
And also denominating gas or spending actions in Sparks, like smaller units than like 0.0001 ETH or $1.
Right.
Just, like,
Yeah,
these design
gamifying it and
patterns are
simple
great.
things like, yeah.
But not gamifying, just things that are more human to interact with. Yeah.
Yeah, just signing arbitrary like data payloads. Like, are you sure you want to sign this? Random numbers. Like,
Yeah.
I've authorized using this application already. Just let me do things. Yeah.
So that's more on like the user-facing side, which I think is particularly interesting that you have strong opinions there, because obviously you've been using it, you know, and you've been in this space a while. But like where AggLayer comes in is almost more on like this like blockchain level abstraction, right? Where it's like users, if the chain abstraction stack is collaborative and you know some new user comes in and uses a new wallet, One Balance, Particle, Near, Gorg, there's all these teams, right? They pick one of these wallets, Zion. Then they would interact on these chains, and somehow the settlement of their transactions on any cross-chain interaction, or the settlement of their wallets across different chains, their state would be settling to AggLayer. So how are you guys thinking about building those relationships and like that stack from the bottom up more so, and like not so much on like the user level, but like when user clicks button, Polygon and AggLayer is making sure that user is safe and getting what they want?
So I think the first thing is making clear lines of what AggLayer is going to do and not do, both from a security model and from like a just functionality model. So the first thing is to be clear, like where our security guarantee begins and ends. The pessimistic proof, which is what is the security model of the AggLayer that says like chains can't rug each other, makes no guarantees of what's happening on a chain. As we like to say, it's like if you've chosen to use a chain, that better be a secure chain. That's your choice. You've decided to do that, whether it's an application person, if you're abstracting the chain choice from a user, or as a user, you're custodying assets on that chain. So if I'm using like a single sequencer rollup with no proofs, and I get rugged, AggLayer can't protect you there. What AggLayer can protect is to say, all right, that chain can't infinite mint a bunch of USDC and drain the balances from other chains. So, right, chains can always rug their users in AggLayer, chains can't rug other chains. I think is like the clear security guarantee we start at. Then the second thing is like, all right, well, where can we assist? We can help and guarantee that like messages ultimately settle according to what chains say they are going to do. So one of the things we basically allow is for chains to add additional security on top of the pessimistic proof. For our zk chains, for example, this is our full execution proof. So for zkEVM, it has to show that its balances are consistent, right? That's the proof of the AggLayer. And then it also, in order to settle, has to show, hey, this entire state transition was valid. I'm following valid EVM. And the block I produced was according to our consensus model, proof of efficiency for zkEVM. For something like POS, right, it's still gonna have to show balances were consistent, but it's not gonna do the full execution proof. It's just gonna show, yep, I have a decentralized proof of consensus. I was able to show that the validator signed off on the block I'm trying to settle on, right? The validators could be colluding and there could be rug. I mean, we won't see it on POS. It's pretty well battle tested network, but the possibility is there. And I think that like making sure that we try to promote to users that they're using chains that are safer. That's why I said I hope the industry starts caring about security matters and making security easier to do. Again, working with teams, like Succinct and other teams that are producing these provers to help all of the stacks get to ZK security is essential for us. And supporting those baseline provers is key. I think as for this higher level area, collaborating with teams like Espresso that are building kind of shared sequencers, working with the RAS providers that are building their own kind of interoperability methods to say, hey, AggLayer can be used as a base to build these sorts of structures. So you inherit these guarantees, but we're not going to build those. We're not going to build those kind of higher level shared sequencing networks ourselves.
Welcome aboard on our journey into the singularity. This is the endgame roadmap for Frax and Fractal, the new L2 out of the Frax ecosystem that is totally based on fractal scaling. Fractal is a modular L2 blockchain built by Frax with modular and fractal scaling in mind. Fractal scaling is based on the Mandelbrot set of fractal images, and it explains how L2s become L3s and the entire app chain lifecycle goes through its evolution. The Frax ecosystem is made of some of the top builders in the space and has stemmed from its OG days of the Frax stablecoin. It is now in the LST space, the LRT space, and this Fractal L2 joins the existing suite of Frax products, including Frax Swap and Frax Lend. You can see Frax Ferry, the bridge to go from any chain, Arbitrum, Optimism, or Mainnet into the Fractal Mainnet. Bridge your tokens and bring your Frax assets into the Fractal ecosystem. Join today to get the best out of Fractal. You are still early. Join today, take part in our expedition into the singularity.
Covalent is solving the long-term data availability problem where a lot of the data availability providers today in the modular space, when you post data to them, they actually only hold that data for about 12 to 16 days. And then it's basically, it could go into an archive node, or oftentimes it's just kind of put away into the abyss. And what Covalent's trying to do is build this long-term data availability solution, which can plug into some of these modular data availability providers and provide this longer-term perpetual data solution. So what we try to think of this as is when you post transaction data onto Celestio or Veil or any of these modular DA solutions or even Ethereum, Covalent is able to provide a long-term data storage and data availability platform for that data after the time period. Blockchains are billboards, not databases, and we need these providers in the space to be able to kind of hold on to the long-term data that is provided from these providers and these blockchain state. This is where Covalent comes in. They just had a nice rebrand. Check them out on Twitter as well as the website. Thank you for being here. Hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
I find it quite fascinating that these rollup stacks, OP stack, etc., have gone from rollup stacks, CDK, to full interoperability roll-up ecosystems as like the next evolution. I'm quite curious as to where we go from here. But it seems to be interesting. It's just, I don't know, it's just very fascinating. It happened quickly as well. Like all of this technical explanation, it's just like, it's crazy. It's like, it was just CDK, now it's like bang, you know.
It's been in the kitchen for a while now. I really want to say it's like, we don't view ourselves as a roll-up stack. I know some of the, or like a roll-up network.
Like cluster.
A group of cluster. We don't really view ourselves as a cluster.
So what is AggLayer then? Is it an interoperability solution?
It's an interoperability solution.
But what's the
network.
difference? That's the real question, right? What's the difference
I would
between
say
a cluster?
the difference is for like things like OP, there's a social charter on top of it, right? You have to give up that sequencer revenue.
15% or whatever.
15%, which is massive.
Correct. So
Like,
opting into AggLayer, I don't have to give you any of my revenue. What revenue do you make if I opt in?
Yeah, okay, I want to ask this. This is because the product offering has evolved over time, and therefore the business model presumably has changed over time or like expanded. How are you thinking about that with AggLayer?
CDK is free open source software.
Yeah.
There's no kind of collective on top you have to opt in. For ARB, like the DAO doesn't own the Nitro. Like we don't have a Nitro license that you have to give funds to, et cetera. That's not how we operate.
Yeah.
We're
So
here to build
Arbitrum license, Optimism, sequencer revenue. How are you all thinking about that?
If you're part of Superchain network.
Correct, yeah.
So for us, for AggLayer, I think it's currently today, it's just you have to pay for the proofs you're settling in, like you have to pay for your proving costs. That's currently it. And I want to say currently because, right, the tech is evolving so fast. I think trying to lock into any one business model right now would be...
Yeah, it's fine if the answer here is, because you're also working with Succinct, who is like generating those proofs
And to lower
as well.
the proving costs as well.
That's just, so we're using SP1 for elements of the pessimistic proof, right? The actual just like taking the Plonky 3 proof and we're using their infrastructure, but the actual like AggLayer itself is agnostic. You can plug in, I don't know, I guess like a Risk Zero or a Valida or insert whatever intermediate VM you want. SP1's live today, so we're going to use it, and Uma and team have been amazing partners, and they're building with Plonky 3 Polygon tech, so you know we know that really well. We know how to plug in with that really well, but ultimately I think it's more of these things are so early that I don't want to lock into a given price model yet, and also I think the answer is we're going to work with the people in the ecosystem. We're putting ideas out there. We're working with a large tent of people to figure out the right way to do it. I think saying right now that I want cut of revenue is super hard for a chain to sign up to. Let's say I'm a major, like let's say that like another exchange wanted to go build a chain. They are not incentivized right now, I would argue, to join OP because base is there. Well, why am I paying revenue that eventually is going to go to retroactive funding that potentially could go to my competitor? And also if I could just run OP stack myself and plug into other interoperability networks, I don't have to pay that massive cost for what is fundamentally open source software that is being subsidized by the ecosystem.
Yeah, I agree. I think it like also in the short term even could be like a good growth strategy of just like, hey, look, we'll figure it out. Let's just like make this happen.
Yeah, don't rent seek in the beginning. Get growth, get traction.
And then rent seek.
And then no, but like then make money, right? Like you have proven amount of fit, then you got to figure out how to accrue value to token holders, accrue value to DAO.
But this is something I tell a lot of DAO teams themselves. The immediate focus is like how do I go and seek rent seek, or how do I immediately try to do like burn and buy. Like in the standard startup world, there's no reason why any startup should be doing a share buyback or should be doing a dividend. Like just maximize on growth. And I think that like at Polygon, that has really been our focus. I mean, even look at POS. Well, yes, we have a 1.559 burn, and there's benefits for that from like a gas price predictability and stability method. But like realistically, the burn is not ultimately burning significant amounts of Matic. It's not like we could dial up gas fee at this point. We have a lot of customers that are just using Polygon and using POS. The validators can vote to move up gas price. They don't want to. The idea is let's continue growing. This market is way too early to be focusing on the vanity metrics of like revenue return to shareholders. I mean, Polygon's a couple of years, POS is a couple of years, less than 5 years old.
A question I want to wrap it up on here is, I agree with you. It is, everything is extremely immature right now from a technology perspective. There's a ton of work to be done. The industry is still early, even though technically it's starting like 08, 09. When do you think it won't be early?
I don't have a great answer for that. I think it's going to be, each part of the stack is going to mature over time. EVM at this point has matured to a point. Are there a lot of issues with it? Yes. There's a lot of issues with JavaScript, yet everyone uses that. I would say rollup stacks. I think there's a couple that have come into view that people have started using, but they're still wildly immature. I think that wallets and tooling, super wildly immature. It was only how long ago that people were using like Mist. And MetaMask came out, we've all started using that, but now we're moving to things like Rainbow and more. I think that we're just super early, and these things come in waves. I mean, we look at how long it takes any tech to kind of get to a stable platform. I could say 3-5 years, but ultimately it's just going to be it will stop looking immature when these nice polished applications are out there that you don't know that under the hood can swap out as parts get more and more stable. I think zk is just coming around to the point where it's now like stable enough to really use. I know that we're about to participate in this big hackathon over in San Francisco, which is all about like, let's make zk's now ready to go. Let's make it real. We could take provers and prove all of Ethereum like at real time for sub 500K a year. That means that we can do chains like POS at like sub 2 million a year. That doesn't really drastically affect gas costs. So, all right, now we're in the place where zk rollups and provers can run at actual size. So now we can really start thinking about actual zk versus where we were 2 years ago when a lot of these zk chains were just starting to launch.
Yeah, the zk space is accelerating rapidly.
Yeah.
And I had bought with Uma and Brendan, and they were saying that the proving times and costs are going down by a matter of 2x almost every month.
Yeah.
Let alone like 4 to 5x per quarter, which has been super cool.
And there's hardware coming that's going to do several orders of magnitude once that gets figured out. Great teams like Fabric and more. And so, as much as I can say, 3-4 years will be ready, I'm just like anyone else. I'm just throwing a dart at a board and saying what sounds nice.
Last timing prediction question for your last one here for us.
Sure.
Where's AggLayer at? What's the
state
of development there?
So AggLayer right now is we have the shared bridge. We've got rollups attached in the shared bridge, and it's currently CDK only. Later this year, we're going to release EVM Sovereign, which means that you can then take, we're first going to release the pessimistic proof. So the pessimistic proof is coming online a couple months, and that's going to allow for that baseline security. So now you're no longer relying on the soundness of our provers. I think as Jordy said on podcasts before, we talk up the security of these zkEVMs. These are really large, complicated pieces of software. If you don't think there's a bug, someone's selling you snake oil. We're now protecting against those bugs with a pessimistic proof because it's real simple, written in Rust, fully audited, and using real base proving tech. Where do we go from there? Then it's going to be EVM Sovereign. Using the pessimistic proof, any EVM chain that wants to join can join. It'll still be permissioned joining, so like you'll have to work with the Polygon team to get onboarded. And then down the line, probably early next year, we're going to be adding this thing called authentications, which means that you can now add your own security on top of the pessimistic proofs. The same way that we add our execution proof for zkEVM or our consensus proof from POS, you can add any arbitrary additional security on top. And so that will allow for, if you're an optimistic chain and you want to wait for full optimistic finality to protect your AggLayer messages, you can do that, or you could spin up a symbiotic, DPoS network, do fast finality in your OP network, or it could be, hey, I'm an asset issuer like a stable coin. I'll throw Circle just as an example here. I'm Circle, instead of wanting to do USDC on every chain, I actually want to hook up my USDC minter directly to the AggLayer so I can natively issue on all of the chains in the network with inheriting the actual security that comes from the pessimistic proof, right? Even Web 2 systems can now connect in using customized security policies from authenticators. That's really like our roadmap. Then there's speed. We're dropped currently at about 50 minutes for L2 to L2 canonical transactions, which is fastest in the industry by a lot. We're going to be moving down to sub 15 minutes. Our goals for later this year, and with fast interop sometime in the future, less than a year, we're hoping to go like sub couple of seconds, which is like the real kind of ultimate goal is, depending on what I would say, like now we're talking about rollup clusters, like shared sequencer cluster or other like fast interop cluster you're a part of, you can get really fast. And I'm being kind of vague on those last ones because we're working with the community to continue working on iterating on it and designing it, and much smarter people than me to have on here talking about it.
Cheers. Thanks for coming on, David.
Of course.
Yeah,
Thanks, guys.
It's great having you.